Hey, my lovely friends, let's learn more vocabulary with Dr. Sam Harris. More example sentences, by the way, as always, will be in the
And,
description.
and there's something more pernicious about the kernel of truth that is doing some mad work in an otherwise spurious argument. So
This is an insightful idea. What I'll try to do is explain the definitions of some of the more difficult words, and then we'll try to put together the whole idea that Sam is trying to get across. So the first word is pernicious. Pernicious means harmful, but not in an obvious way, in a subtle way. And sometimes it's very difficult to spot the pernicious effects of something. You may already be familiar with the word insidious. Pernicious is one of its synonyms. Let's pronounce together pernicious, which is an adjective. Let's move on and talk about the word kernel. Literally, this is kind of like the softer part of a seed, typically. But the kernel of truth is like the central part of an argument which is true, albeit a very small part, right? Like the grain of truth in an argument. So this is kernel with stress on the first part. Now, let's talk about the definition of the idiom to do mad work. It means to manipulate something in a negative way, to have a negative impact on something. And the last one here is spurious. Something like an argument, a line of reasoning that is spurious may appear to be true. On the surface, it may seem valid, but upon examination, you will realize that it is actually flawed. It is wrong. So what message is Sam trying to communicate here? He's talking about people who put together arguments where there is a grain of truth. And this kernel of truth, unfortunately, is manipulating their entire argument. It's very difficult for people to see through this manipulation because they go, oh, there is that sentence that rings true. So the entire thing must probably be valid.
it is in fact true that vaccine injury is a thing, right? There's some people who have terrible responses to vaccines, not just COVID vaccines, any vaccine.
Yep.
However well tested and wise to take as a general matter, there are people who just can't take vaccines for a variety of reasons. And discover that sometimes by having gotten a vaccine and had a terrible response to it. So if you focus on if you try to deny the reality of vaccine injury, many people know that can't possibly be true because they know someone who had some terrible response, right? So, and yet it's very easy to use the reality of vaccine injury in any conversation about COVID vaccines or any vaccine, the way someone like RFK Jr. would, to stoke fear that is in the aggregate quite irrational.
Okay, to stoke fear is to cause fear. Sometimes you use this word stoke in the expression to stoke the fire, to fan the flames, right? So I hope his example here is crystal clear to all of you. He is talking about vaccine injury. And sometimes people put together an argument that on the whole is flawed, is wrong. But because they just focus on vaccine injury that people will have experienced, a lot of the audience resonate with the entire argument. And they are morally confused, or they can't just see through this deceptive move.
If debates of the sort that you're opting not to do aren't an effective way of disabusing people of some of these notions.
When you disabuse someone of an opinion, you persuade them out of their false belief or the opinion that they hold. It's a good phrase to learn, to disabuse someone of something. Pay attention to the preposition there.
What is the framework, or what are the tools that can be used if we agree that we would be better off as a society if fewer people believed some of this stuff?
Well, I'm not saying categorically that debates are never the right thing. So, for instance, I wouldn't say that.
Okay, so categorically is an adverb, which means across the board, completely.
That absolutely no one should debate a person like RFK Jr. I just don't think I'm the person to do it. And I think the format would really have to be thought out well in advance. And because it does require, again, because it's so asymmetric, because someone can just hit you with a blizzard of detail, which is...
Okay, when you hit someone with a blizzard, a snowstorm of detail, you get the image right there, right? You are overwhelmed, and perhaps you cannot respond to every point that they raise accurately and on the spot.
In its main points, a proper conspiracy theory or fairly delusional, and yet will contain lots of misleading facts. You just have to you need to sort of fact check all that in advance, right? I mean, if you're going to just have 90 minutes of audio or video to showcase this conversation, you need to have agreed upon let's say the sources that would be cited in advance, right? And so you need to have kind of pre-bunked those sources. You need to know what's wrong.
Okay, when you pre-bunk a source or a person, essentially you learn to spot those errors. Okay, it's a very important thing to do. If you're a scientist, you need to train yourself, teach yourself to identify those errors in the sources.
Along with the study that RFK Jr. referenced last time, right? And you need to do all that work. And for me, it's not, I'm not an epidemiologist or a virologist or an immunologist. I mean, I'm not a relevant specialist in any of those areas. And I think it would take someone whose full-time job is to chase down all of those bad references to do that adequately. And that said, I think there are some people who you probably shouldn't quote platform, because to platform them is to dignify their side of the argument with much more credence than it should be, right?
Okay, credence is validity. I think what Sam is suggesting here is that sometimes when you platform the wrong person, you give them a level of importance that they don't deserve because they just lack the credentials. You give them too much credence or validity, and they just don't deserve that. Anyways, I hope you've learned a word or two with my video.